in this episode.
I've always disagreed with people on this. I just haven't really argued with them on it. Do you know why I do distance for players when like I'm coaching? Because it's training their mind. It's not training their body.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
training their mind. I want to see when you're going to break.
Yeah.
Like when we did conditioning for our players, it was the secondary thing was to get their bodies in shape.
Yeah.
The first priority was I want to see when you're going to break, because that's when I'm going to know, all right, this is when I can pull you from a game, or this is when I need to address a situation. Mm-hmm. You're going to learn so much more about a player on running and conditioning than anything else. Like, I don't know if G did this, but I could really tell as a captain, we had to run a mile every day during the spring, every day. And those 4 laps sucked after practice. Mm-hmm. And you could really tell who was going to not be the clutch guy.
Sure.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of The Closing Pitch. My name is Spiker Helms, and this is a show about people, culture, and how to create a winning lifestyle. Thinking about switching up the beginning. Haven't really figured out what I want to do yet.
If you have any suggestions, send them in to spiker@rollingsigers.com.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that quick promo for
your email.
For my email.
Well, I just want people to know.
That was our advertisement for today.
That was our advertisement.
Today, guys, we're going to be talking about emotions, talking about the human spirit, and bat celebrations, bat flips, the let's go mentality.
Let's go!
Oh my gosh, it's just so overdrawn.
It's done.
It's overdrawn.
Come on, guys. It's done.
Yeah, like
let's not
do that. Let's not go right now. I'm just waiting for someone to come up with something new. It goes in streaks. It's because what kids do is their brains are not fully developed yet. Like your brain doesn't develop until like mid-20s, right? So you're trying to grab information and you're trying to figure out what's good, what's bad, and then you're trying to figure out your emotions. Well, when someone gets really excited, they don't really know what to do. So the first thing that they do is they look at what the big boys do.
Yeah.
Which, if you probably looked at the College World Series or you looked at the World Series, some player got really excited and then said, "Let's go," and then it just took off like wildfire.
You know where it lost me though? When they started saying it after singles. That's where you lost me. Okay? I was all for it in the big plays of the game. It was getting guys hyped. And then it kind of trickled over like a double, and they're doing the celly out there at second base, which we can talk about. And then it trickled its way down into singles. And I'm sure it'll happen like a pitcher will throw a strike. Let's go, Robbie! That's where it lost me.
It lost me like after like the first inning. When a pitcher strikes out somebody, it's like, bro, we're in the first inning.
Calm down. Long way to go.
I know you're excited. It's the summer. We're in the middle of Indianapolis. No scouts are in sight, but I love the energy.
Cannot celebrate singles, fellas.
And like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love emotions. I love it when someone gets really excited. I love it even more when I catch it on camera because it's just something that I can use later on in the future for the Tigers. I'm not saying I'm against the emotions. I've said on this podcast in previous episodes that I love the bat flip. I like it, but you got to deserve it. Mm-hmm. You don't realize when you deserve it until you get there and it feels comfortable and you do it. The amount of work that takes you to get all the way up to that point, you have the right to flip that bat because you've went through not just the physical side of getting destroyed, but you had to go through the emotional side. Those pro guys, some of those guys are making crap all the way up until they get to Major League Baseball.
Sure.
They have to get secondary jobs. They have to wake up way earlier than everybody else in the winter. They are doing the things that no one wants to do, and they're getting paid like crap, and they deserve every single moment that they get on that big stage to do whatever celebration that they want to do.
Well, they also understand the ramifications of it. They also understand, they have a feel for the game. They have a feel for the situation. They're not just doing it after one home run on a random Tuesday game. It's normally happening, in a big situation where some emotions can be involved.
That's 100%. And I just think that from an observation standpoint, I can see where players are wanting to do that. And like, this guy just hit a double off the wall in the College World Series in Omaha. I'm going to do the same exact thing. Like, yeah, do it when it's right and when the moment calls for it, but just don't do it every, like, example, this summer, our players would do a celly after a double.
Which I'm actually all right with. I don't know how you feel it.
I felt like some of it was just a little overdrawn, and it was just like, guys, you're supposed to do that.
Well,
it's the third inning of a game, a fourth inning of a game, and we're trying to scratch something up. Now, if it was like sixth or seventh inning of a ball game and it was a big moment,
yeah,
it's all you, man. And I didn't say anything. I was quiet about it because kids are going to be kids. They saw something on TV, and part of our job is to make sure that they're having a good experience. And if that's what it calls for, I'm not going to rain on their parade, because there was bigger problems that we had to solve for that team.
Sure.
And help them teach them, like, expectations from a training standpoint and all that. That was a higher priority. Now, if we had them for a full year, 365 days, and we got all of that training figured out, and then we got them on the routine, and then we started seeing that, then I probably would have said some words like, hey, not right now.
Well,
later. You can do it later, just not right now.
I think the one thing to think of, though, in terms of the energy, the celebration aspect, just kind of the way younger players are acting these days and how they're trying to emulate it, that's just kind of who they are. And that's kind of how they get motivated and excited about the game. Like the good old days of like showing up and you're ready to play because of the competition factor and the, we get to play baseball today. Well, that's there, but that's not the driving motivation anymore. Like kids love, like those celebrations, they love that. So I think they like that stuff sometimes more than just the actual competition factor, which I'm not saying is right or wrong, but that's kind of how they get motivated, and that's how they get locked in a little bit.
But also, it shoots them out of the gate, though. That's the thing that I'm getting at, is that, like, I totally understand.
Shoots them out of the gate.
So they get out of the gate, and it's the third inning, and then it's the 10th game of the year, and then their emotions are so high. You're gonna have a drawdown. Like it's facts. Like you get a dopamine hit, and then if you don't have a high threshold of dopamine, that on the way down is not fun, and the next day is gonna be just god awful.
And it's like, it kind of starts the motor, right? But then you still have to, as a player, have the ability to keep that motor going all the time. You just can't be like, I feel like most of the time the younger guys wait for that situation to happen and don't create it. They don't create that, like they're waiting for that moment to now show energy and excitement instead of from the first pitch, from the first at bat, from the first anything, having that motor, having that excitement going.
Well, what I thought was funny is that they would have that motor when they would do it like in the third inning or fourth inning.
And when they were winning.
Yeah. But when we had a walk-off situation, they didn't know what to do.
I know. That's true.
And then I was like, guys, we just walked it up. And they're like, oh, yeah. They just started going crazy. And it's one of those things where you're teaching the player how to it's more about teaching the player how to regulate their emotions and understand when to use those emotions and when to not use those emotions, because it's more of an art than anything else. It's
true. And you know what, you're never going to truly understand until you've been in that situation a million times, and that's how you kind of get that feel and garner that. But I always think of like the tale of like two different types of teams and coaches, right? You got old school coach over here who's like, don't show emotions, play with a stoic face, like respect the game. Respect the unwritten rules of the game. You can't show up another player. You can't cheer. You can't do this. You can't do that. And it's like taking the entire fun out of it, which I think if you're taking that approach these days, you're not going to have a team to coach for very long, because that will just kill the love and joy out of the game for most, young guys, especially today. You're not going to get away with it. Flip side, then you got the coach who, and this is the opposite extremes, right? Then you got the coach who just has zero control over his team. His team is, one guy has a hat on, like a sombrero in the dugout. The other guy's got a suit coat on, and they're yelling and they're screaming in the pitcher's windup, and they're doing all kinds of crazy nonsense, which is really just like not disgracing the game, but legitimately making it a farce. And it then obviously they're not focused in the game. They're only there for that. And that's the opposite side. I find like somewhere in the middle is probably the correct point to coach, right? Like what we kind of did a little bit with reining it in. Hey, here are the times you do it. Here are the times not to do it. You talk about it. But overall, I think you want to embrace a little bit of that. You want to embrace some of that excitement, that energy level, because that's what keeps you loving the game, right? The fun stuff like that where you're with your teammates, hanging out, that's a lot of the stuff you remember. So you kind of want to do a little bit of both, in my opinion.
It's a yin and a yang where I've seen the guys that celebrate really hard, and then when they get hurt or they are not feeling it, it's like a whole total pendulum swing, and you can tell exactly what's going on in that person's mind. Like they're wearing their emotions on their sleeve,
sure.
Which stoicism, like you mentioned it, a lot of people think that stoicism means that you got to be completely cold. Mm-hmm. That's not what stoicism is. Stoicism is being able to understand your emotions, being able to deal with pain and hardship and not display those emotions when you're going through that pain and through that hardship.
Sure.
But it's experiencing it and still feeling those emotions and being able to use it correctly. It's like X-Men. Like I know I made a huge total correlation here that doesn't make any sense, but it will. Like when the Doctor gets those new X-Men, he tries to tell them how to control their powers, right? Your emotions are your powers. You got to figure out how to control them. You can't just let it go off on the rails and just destroy everything in your path.
You brought that one back a little bit.
Oh, I know.
A little bit.
Yeah. So it's because your emotions can destroy a lot of things.
It's 100%. I have that talk all the time, because I would be like what's it? I am the lead example in that case of a person who had very, very tough times in terms of controlling my emotions. Yeah, I was awful. I got told by coaches all the time leading up until I probably didn't really learn how to control anything until maybe sophomore year of college. But all the way leading up, I got told by coaches over and over that if you were going good and you were excited and you were this and that, you're the best dude in the world to have on the bump, and we want you pitching. But when it went south, even just a little bit, or somebody got in your head or this or that, you were probably the worst dude to have on the mound, and there was no in between. And we had to get you out super fast because it was going to go off. Like, I was going to lose my shit, and I was going to yell at people, and I just couldn't control it. And I was the same way in the dugout a little bit at that time. Like, I'd be chirping players. I'd be doing this, doing that. I'd be the loudest guy in the field, which sometimes was good and sometimes was a distraction really, really bad. And I didn't know that, but
that's strategically knowing when to use it, when not to use it. Like, think about Larry Bird, think about Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tiger Woods. They use their emotions effectively. They use their mental side extremely strategically.
Well, sure.
Like, they're just all in on, okay, I'm going to be really good with my body, but I'm going to be even better, Black Ninja-esque with my mentality and my emotions.
Yeah, I mean, they're next level with that stuff. I mean, they're complete and utter psychopaths in the best way possible.
Yeah, well, David Goggins in his book, Can't Stop Me, or Can't Hurt Me, sorry, he mentioned that he was trying out for the varsity team, and the varsity coach didn't like how he was trash talking on the court, and so he had to follow suit. And this is in Indiana, and they worshipped Larry Bird.
Sure.
And Goggins was like, what are you talking about? Larry Bird was the biggest trash talker
in
the NBA at the time. What are we talking about? He wasn't just some choir boy.
Right.
He was out there going out and trying to get some souls.
Murder you. Yeah, for
so
sure.
It's funny how some people take someone's game and they think it's this way than that way instead of really studying them and really understanding. I think that's what happens with players is they observe them from a distance off of TV. They see a highlight and a guy just gives like a fist pump. They're like, oh, I'm going to do that. Like when celebrations at home plate happened, I remember when it was like yesterday, we're like, oh, when we hit another home run, we're going to do the exact same celebration that Prince Fielder did where he stepped on the plate and then everyone like went backwards. It's like, no, that's not how that's not what you're supposed to do. It was a walk-off home run. You know what I'm saying? But it was in a big moment as well.
Can't stop them from trying it though.
Yeah. Well, no,
they're gonna try it. That's how that's how young guys are. That's how it is these days. They're gonna see a little clip on Twitter. They're gonna see a highlight on SportsCenter. They're gonna see something like this, and they'll be like, "That's cool. We need to do this next game. Whenever this happens, we're gonna do X, Y, Z." And then they do it. And if you notice when they do it, they always look right over to the coach after they do it to see, well, was that bad? Did I get away with it? Did he like it? Okay. They test you, right?
Yeah.
Like players tested me all the time this last summer.
Yep.
And I would let them get to the point where I thought it was good, and then I would be like, nope, we're done there.
Yep. No, that's the art of coaching is it's not labeling something good and labeling something bad. It's observing the behaviors and then explaining and saying and empathizing with them and saying, hey, I understand where you're coming from, but socially that's not working with us. We're not going to do that because this is why.
Oh yeah. And so for example, I coached 2 weekends ago and I won't say who it was, but I had a player get a little emotional on the mound. He's a young sophomore and struck a dude out to end the inning. He made a little gesture to the opposing dugout and kind of stared down, and it actually kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't ready for that. Didn't see it coming.
What inning was it?
Second. To an older team, and we were losing, so it wasn't the right situation for this type of a gesture. And it was a teaching moment for that young man.
So it's the fall, it's the second inning, and it's an older team.
Now,
and you're losing.
Now, see, from my eyes, okay, and I immediately put the kibosh to that. I stopped him. I walked out, he's walking off the mound. I met him before he got to the third base line. I said, we're not going to do any of that, and here's why, blah, 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 blah. Now, as I later in his body language kind of sunk down because I kind of knocked him down a couple pedestals. Later on, I talked to him about why. That was probably not the moment. You just needed to stop the action. Later on, I talked to him about the why. I'm like, listen, man, I love that you have the emotions. I love that you're feeling that amped up out there. Now, here's why we don't do that for all these reasons, okay? Respect to the other team, this or that. We're not going to let them, show them that they're in your head. We're not going to do all these things and, basically used it as a teaching moment, but I like it and I hate it, but it's going to be there. And he saw that guaranteed from a pro guy doing it. 100%. He saw some dude K a guy on a 99 mile per hour fastball, probably dugouts were chirpy. He did something to the other dugout. He's like, I'm going to do that next time. But that's what they do. They test you, right? Mm-hmm. But now for that dude, hopefully, he knows that that's probably not the right time or that he should not do that in general. I learned. So it's the only way. Like, you're going to make, again, my advice to coaches on the ability to control emotions is like, you're not going to be able to control them. Like, trying to set boundaries and say X, Y, and Z of how we do it. Like, even the best guys who are buttoned up on the communication side and saying to the team, this is our expectations. This is what we expect you to act like and do. This is how you carry yourself. That's all good and well, and you should do that, but it's going to come out. And then you just have to use all those as teaching moments. And when it's going good, embrace it and push it forward and make sure that they're, really getting after it, because that's great. That keeps kids involved in the game. When it goes awry, like that situation, real quick, you got to stop it and teach it. But I think if I would have just yelled at him and said, you don't do this, blah, 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 and I would have never gone back and talked to him about why, I think now that player has a bad taste in his mouth. He doesn't really understand why he just got yelled at. He just probably looks at me as an authority figure and is like, that guy's a jerk. That guy doesn't even like me. I don't want him as my coach. But I think if you go ahead and teach it and talk about why, then you ultimately will get the result you want.
Well, that's the difference between being a dictator and making sure that you're being a teacher. Dictator and teacher are totally different. Mm-hmm. And a teacher is able to say, I'm not going to control you. I'm just going to teach you.
Mm-hmm.
And going, saying to your team, hey, we're not going to be doing this, and this. Well, I'm a rebel at heart. I'm like, I'm going to do that.
Right.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to see how close I can get to the line. Where if you end up empathizing with the kids and like really understanding what they really want, which is they want to have fun and they want to play, but also living inside those boundaries of like, hey, I want to learn. I want to learn what's actually right and what's actually wrong. And internally, that's what they want.
Sure.
Because they ultimately want to get to be Major League Baseball players or college baseball players or the best player that they possibly can be. So, and they want to have that bravado because bravado's sexy. Like when Max Scherzer strikes out the side in the 8th inning after a long start and he gives a fist pump or he looks more determined, I want that.
For sure.
I want to be that guy.
For sure. Well, and at the end of the day, that's how I learned, emulating the people that I saw. You know, that's how I had tried to emulate, Ken Griffey Jr. and how he played the game and how the emotions were when, Randy Johnson had a big K. And those are the guys I grew up watching. And, so I acted like them, right? I mean, I don't know how else you do it. Yeah, you look at the people who are doing it and getting paid and you try to do what they do. But then again, I'm telling you, it's up to the coaches.
Now, the last thing I wanted to mention too is the inner voice that those kids have too, where if they have that bravado, that's fine. If you teach them like socially when it's acceptable, when it's not, but they also have to understand that when going gets tough, they've got to have that voice in check and not have it on the downside where they end up showing the bad emotions where they sulk or they're sad, or even when like you're doing conditioning. I had a conversation with Hacker a number of years ago. And it was about like, what does running have to do with anything? Why were they doing long distance? And I've always disagreed with people on this. I just haven't really argued with them on it. Do you know why I do distance for players when like I'm coaching? Because it's training their mind. It's not training their body.
Yeah, for
it's training their mind. I want to see when you're going to break.
Yeah.
Like when we did conditioning for our players, it was the secondary thing was to get their bodies in shape.
Yeah.
The first priority was I want to see when you're going to break, because that's when I'm going to know, all right, this is when I can pull you from a game, or this is when I need to address a situation. Mm-hmm. You're going to learn so much more about a player on running and conditioning than anything else. Like, I don't know if G did this, but I could really tell as a captain, we had to run a mile every day during the spring, every day. And those 4 laps sucked after a practice. Mm-hmm. And you could really tell who was going to not be the clutch guy.
Sure.
Easily.
Sure.
Because they just dogged it. And they didn't get the chances in the game. When it was a clutch moment, they didn't get the chance. But the guy who really went out hard and tried to make that mile, excuse my language, it's bitch, they were the ones that got the opportunity.
For sure. I mean, when we're talking about the ability to control emotions both ways, I try to lay this out to players this way. When you're playing the game of baseball, there are traps all around you at all times. And what I mean by that is, and let's just talk on the emotional side. It's a roller coaster, right? You got steady Eddie in the middle. You got high-end, happy emotions, excited here. And you got low-end, really crappy, sulky emotions down here, right? And at any given point in the game, you're swaying one way or the other. And now the key is to try to stay even keel. That's what you see the best athletes in the world doing. The Michael Jordans, the Tom Brady's, they're not getting too high highs, they're not getting too low lows, they stay here. But I'm a firm believer that they've built in this ability to know when the trap is coming and to avoid it. They know when all of a sudden a big moment and they have some success, and they don't let themselves take the pedal off. They don't let themselves get too emotional, and they're like, oh, no, I feel that. Get back here.
Well, they touch it, and they strategically touch it. It's not like they just go up and then they come back down.
Right.
They go up and they go immediately back down
But
to where
they
their base
recognize the trap.
level is. Yep.
Same deal on the other side. A couple bad things start to happen. My emotions could have gone off the handle. I never saw the trap. I walked right into that sucker, and I full steam, and I was embraced in it, right? Until I learned how to look for it. I started, everybody understands their kind of angry inner feelings, that they can feel the frustration that starts to come in. Well, I learned that when I felt that coming on, I had to trigger something else. I had to pivot quickly. Otherwise, in my case, it would have gone bad very, 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 very fast. So you have to know traps are there. You got to learn how to avoid them.
That's the best part about being like a youth coach and a high school coach, is that you get to see that moment and teach them right away. Like, hey, there's the trap. You need to recognize that. Let's get off that trap and let's go here. Every player goes through that. Every player goes
for sure,
a
million times over. And
like your first slump. I remember my first slump. It was like a death trap. It was a black hole of death, and I was like, "Whoa, this is weird."
Oh yeah.
Do you remember like when you went to like a slump for pitching wise? Like,
no, for sure.
Where it just seems like the walls were closing in on you, and you didn't know what to do.
Couldn't do anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it happened my junior year of college. I got moved from the starting rotation to relief, and then I was really bad in relief because I got moved to relief because of bad as starter, and then I just couldn't do anything right, and I was, it was bad, and I stayed there for a while until I changed my mentality.
It's not unique to any player.
No, for sure.
It's very normal, but very familiar, and it's just your first experience.
And generally speaking, players don't learn from it after one time or two times. It normally takes a coach saying it 3, 4. That's why you have to be on it all the time. You have to be, don't be the coach that says, well, I told you this once, you got to have it now. Because in this type of a situation, I have to keep showing them, you remember that? The trap's right there. It's coming. Hey, you remember this happened last week, right? Got to stop it now, right? And you have to keep going at that, because then all of a sudden, that's when the light bulb moment happens for players, where they're like, oh, that's what he's talking about. Because at first, it was like, yeah, no, of course. Yeah, I'm mad, right? Yeah, I know I'm mad. I just had a bad inning. That's the result you're going to get. And then the next time, he's saying it again, whatever. Third time, you're going to be like, wait a second. That's a trend. Similar things happened the last 2 times, and I did this, and then similar things happened. And now all of a sudden, the third time, they're like, I got to stop it. That's generally how it goes. So you got to keep going as a coach. You got to keep being on that.
And that's why players need to play a lot of games.
For sure.
You
got to see it.
You have to get so many reps. Yeah. So many reps, so many experiences, so many different types of situations. I mean, I thought I was good at baseball in high school. I didn't get really good until junior college.
Sure.
Because you're playing every single day. Yeah. It's like spring training.
You play like 80 games a year.
Oh, well, I mean, fall you're playing, I remember you do
25 to 30.
You do triple headers.
Yeah, 25 to 30.
You'll get there at
50 in the spring.
You'll roll off the bus at 8 a.m. You get on the field, you do your BP for an hour, and then you just roll into games, and then you don't leave that ballpark until about 6 or 7 p.m.
Yep, for sure.
And if you're lucky, they have lights, and then you play until like 8 or 9, and you're like, okay, time to go to class the next morning.
Yep.
Anything else on this topic?
No, I mean, I think it's a ever evolving topic that can go a million different ways, but it's, whether we're talking about celebrations or controlling the emotional roller coaster or whatever else it is, emotions and celebration, they're not leaving the game. I just think, find that middle ground and, teach it the right way, basically.
Guys, that's this episode of The Closing Pitch. My name is Spiker Helms. Across from me is David Birkby. Give us a follow on Twitter. Give us a subscribe, 5 stars, preferably if you do give us a review. And we will catch you in the next episode.
See you guys.